we already had World War III.
Do you think World War III is about to begin?
Could World War III be a war on war?
Okay. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, leave comments down there, all that jazz. That'd help a lot.
Me, Casey, you subscriber, yes. And you also are a music fan, right? Who doesn't love music? We write our own music, put it at the end of the episode. You should go check it out. And patreon.com/KSMVidcast has it all. So what are we talking about today, or tonight in my case?
Day, night, what's the difference? Well, you know, I'm pretty sure we've covered this at some point in the past. Maybe not a whole episode, but we have covered it. What do you think World War III could begin sometime soon? What do you think?
Honestly, I think no. And not because of any particular like mutually assured destruction sort of mentality or anything like that. I actually think a lot of that is kind of garbage. But just because like I feel like we might have evolved past that after seeing just how horrible that situation really is. And
well, here's the thing. There's this theory, and I can't remember the name of is it the turning or something like that? Basically that like every 80 or so years there's these major events like wars and things that happen, and essentially the theory goes that there's a period of peace for a long time because a particular generation experienced really awful warfare, but that generation eventually it becomes like just stories to the next generations, and then that first generation dies, and the people who are currently alive actually never experienced that, so they're more apt to then repeat that same mistake of war and stuff. And I don't know how much I believe it, but there is, if you look, there is kind of a pattern there.
I mean, the two biggest wars were only 20 years apart. So a lot of the people that fought in the first one were also in the second.
Well, and that's those two kind of like World War I didn't really fully end. It just like carried over into World War II. So it's like, you know, but that's the thing. It's like World War I, if you look, what's going on right now, there's similar things, but a lot of similarities to what was going on before World War I happened. Like all these conflicts everywhere, you know, different factions teaming up and stuff like that. And you know, one big ass evil superpower basically that is bent on taking over. And like, you know, I could see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like the misnomer of World War is that, you know, it kind of implies that every country has a stake in the game, and really it's mainly like the major world powers are all kind of stirring the pot, and
yeah, no,
that's just a handful of countries really. So like in that, when you look at it that way, like it is probably fairly likely, especially given the kind of climate that we're seeing now.
That's
in the world politics.
Well, and you know, like you said, it's not the whole world, but essentially in like say World War II, almost the whole world was touched by the events that took place. You know,
Well, yeah,
Nazis
I
were
mean,
all
of course
over in
that would
Africa,
be,
and you know,
yeah.
South America. There were bases all over the place, and it's that
But
kind of
I mean,
thing.
that's kind of the case in any war, like when some other country starts a war, the United States is like, oh, gas has to be more expensive now. Like there's always some kind of
Mhm.
ripple effect, whether or not it's actually justified,
Mhm.
is another question altogether. But
Well, it does. Like even economic turmoil can impact. It has a global reach
mhm, mhm,
from major, even like say China. If they had some kind of big economic hiccup, it would affect everybody. You know, everybody
right,
would feel it, and so wars do that too in a large way as well. So even if there aren't people in a particular country, like say Argentina, involved in actual combat, like they're still affected by it. So it's kind of,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you could call it a war at that point, but I mean, the war is going on and it's impacting people. So it's like everybody's feeling it. Um,
I mean,
Whereas,
if
like, say there's a small war between two small countries, right? That may the rest of the world may not feel that. Um,
um, I mean, in that vein, I'd argue we as in the U.S.
mhm.
We already started and are carrying on World War III with this whole war on terror crap.
Yeah,
Because how much has that changed the landscape of the entire global uh, uh, transportation
mhm.
dynamic? Like
Well, it's certainly impacted the Middle East. You know,
absolutely. But I mean, it's also changed, the way flight is handled all over the world.
yeah,
Like in varying degrees, of course. But the U.S. is definitely like led the charge in really overdoing it with security and using that as kind of like a theatric cover for ulterior motives.
hmm
And in effect, it's kind of like a cold world war,
yeah,
right? Like,
it kind of is. Well, and I would say certainly that the U.S.'s involvement throughout the world has certainly, to some extent, set the stage for a potential World War III. I
yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, the unfortunate part is like even if we haven't already created this cold World War III, I feel like the U.S. is going to be the reason for whatever World War III does turn out to be. Um,
Yeah, well, at least a player, not maybe the
Definitely a
primary
player,
reason,
but um,
but
yeah,
a you know, a starring actor, let's say, a
yeah,
lead role.
yeah. Because I mean, it always does come down to like either whomever is in the most global power or the runner up of
Mm,
the most global power, right?
yeah.
It's always this sparring kind of king of the mountain shit
Hmm.
that humans just can't seem to let go of, like
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
swinging their dicks around and
Oh yeah. Well, and there's an emergent property in politics too. That's like, you know, same with corporations. You get enough people, and very bizarre patterns emerge that are not any one individual. It's like this, I don't know, something that is born out of the network of all these different minds and systems connected together and stuff. That's like, it's not one person, you know.
we are legion.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, or the Borg, you know,
Yeah,
to some extent. It's kind of wacky.
yeah, it really is. Like, uh, I mean, even in the corporate world, like treating a corporation as if it were a human entity,
Well, in a
that kind of
sense,
concept. Yeah,
it kind of, it's like it's a separate intelligence that is an emergent property. Like, you know, it's like it comes from all of these individual components, and that form something that is its own thing in a way, which is, that's what I'm kind of getting at here, is like,
Yeah.
it's a very bizarre thing that happens.
And that can do good things, but often it seems to do the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I
uh,
mean, you can have things like NASA or something that have done
right.
spectacular things from hundreds of thousands of people working together.
Crowdfunding,
Yeah,
charity, things like that, you know, like,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Problem solving, even like Reddit and 4chan, they've solved crimes like that nobody could figure out. It's
Huh.
like you get enough minds together, and it's almost like this hyper intelligent being that is like godlike, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly, that's the way to solve problems. And this is why I feel like, going back to an earlier episode, the concept of having world police, I think, really would uh, guarantee peace
Mm-hmm.
if it were executed correctly,
That's
and
key. Yeah.
like an actual responsive force, and not a I don't
Not
know, like,
proactive, but more
right,
like
yeah, yeah,
reactive. Maybe proactive in the sense of like, oh, hey, the Russians are on the border of Ukraine about to invade. Let's stop them.
yeah.
That's good. That's a proactive thing, but it's kind of reactive. It's, you know, not like attacking a country who's just minding their own business, you know.
Right, yeah, not Minority Report kind of proactive, but
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
a
Well, it
proactive
like, so
reaction.
kind of in line with this, you've heard of the concept in economics called the wisdom of the crowds, right?
uh yeah, but remind me, like, the
Well, it goes back to a guy, I think maybe a mathematician or something, who studied this kind of strange effect that basically, so it's like, you, if you have a jar, say, of gumballs, a big glass jar, right, and you ask people to guess, okay, ask like 1,000 people, they write the number down and they put it in the thing, and like whoever's closest, it wins, right? um, well, this guy tested this over and over and over again in various county fairs, where it's like, oh, how heavy is this animal or something, right? And he found that while everybody is probably wrong, there are some people closer or further from the truth. When you take the average of all the guesses, it's almost spot on every single time, especially when you have a larger sample. Like, you know, if you're, instead of 10 people guessing, you have 100 or 200 or 1,000, that the larger the number of guesses, it gets closer and closer to exactly dead on every time, which is really weird.
I
And that's
mean,
what I'm saying. Like,
isn't that obvious though? Like, if you're increasing your n,
mm-hmm.
let's say, um, the number of people that are you're sampling in this, uh, the average becomes more and more dilute, and people are generally capable of coming within the ballpark of most of these things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how many balls are in this cup? How much does an elephant weigh? Like, we have benchmarks and analogies and comparisons that we all kind of make in our head, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all totally random guesses. But when you start, like, averaging those across a huge sample of people, of course it's going to be like close to right.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm kind of getting at, is like when it comes to problem solving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one person will have the right answer, but when you get a lot of people putting in ideas, then if you were to take the average of that, that might be the right answer.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
that's like a
So
crime,
so
solving a crime or something, right? You know.
so how does that play out with World War III, though? Like, or
Well,
world
we're
police,
just
let's
kind
say.
of on a tangent, I think, here, but
Oh.
like, um, I
I
don't
mean, in the
remember how.
concept of world police, though, like, that does kind of go back to what I said in the episode about it. Like, it would absolutely require each and every country having a representative voice.
And that's where like something akin to the UN, like if the UN had a military force, and you would very carefully have to craft this so it couldn't get out of control, obviously.
Right.
Um,
That's why I think it needs to be entirely separate from the UN, because that's
well,
already an established beast of its own.
yes, it is. And I maybe like in that case, like essentially if it came to like a vote or something, every country would get one vote apiece. So nobody could lord over the others. The United States would get one vote and Angola would get one vote, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how it would work. And that way, that would kind of balance things out pretty well, I think. And when it comes to decision making on a global scale, I think. And that in a way, there does kind of need to be some kind of system, whether it be, I don't know what, but that to kind of like keep the peace in a way and kind of like agree on things. Cause like there's another problem is space. So I'm sure
the final frontier.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge problem with space junk potentially locking us into Earth forever or for like thousands of years. If enough stuff is up there and starts colliding, like we may not be able to go to space. And so it's like, okay, well, okay, sure. Like we could agree with the US could agree with Russia and China and other spacefaring countries. Like, okay, this is what we're going to do. But there may be other countries that are like, hey, we might want to go to space as well. So, hey, let's involve everybody and kind of come to a conclusion that fits best for all, really. And it should have some authority because we don't want people going rogue and just like affecting, because it's like, that's one of those things. Space affects everybody. So like, it's a big deal. And so we have to be cautious of that. And the same thing with keeping the peace in terms of like internally, these conflicts and stuff. There should be some kind of large group that basically all countries come together and they decide like, or maybe in terms of judgment, right? Who was that a good thing or was that a bad thing? And everybody has a say.
I just had a great thought. What if World War III were a war on war? Like we did just that. Like we came together as literally every single country and decided to create this force that would prevent war from ever happening again.
Mm-hmm.
Because if every country were in it,
mm-hmm.
and I forget how many countries there are, but like it's enough that it's enough to overtake by a vast majority the few countries that hold all the power.
Well, I agree. You're right, because like for instance, it's like just like space, every country has a stake in things, especially when the stakes are so high when it comes to say like nuclear war, because it's like, okay, well, this little country here, even if they're not directly involved, they will be affected if a bunch of nukes start flying all over the place. Everybody is going to be affected. And so they should have a say in that. And yeah, I would like to see a complete disarmament of every country all at once. Like no nukes, no weapons of war, like very small scale things. And then if we do develop any warfare technology, it should be specifically outward facing, that is out from the earth, to prepare us for not only, I mean, there's things that kind of go hand in hand. It's like, okay, well, we don't know if there's aliens out there, but if there are, we're kind of sitting ducks if we're not ready for that. So maybe getting ready as a planet together for that would be good. And we could also kind of justify that even in the absence of aliens by saying at the same time, we're going to develop stuff to take out space stuff that could, giant flaming meteorites, that kind of thing. Because that's a huge deal. Or defend ourselves against a huge solar flare. Also clean up space junk and that kind of thing. Like I think that would be, we've reached a point in humanity where I think that's like the focus we should have.
Mm-hmm.
Like infighting is dumb. We should be
Totally.
trading and building together. There's no point in one country attacking another country. And like we're at this point with the connectivity we have, we're not different countries. We're all one big, huge country. Like that, it's just like pretending we're role playing that we're, oh look, we're our own little society, but no, we're not anymore.
Yeah.
And so now I think it's time to flip that switch and stop fighting. And again, it's like, okay, well, small scale things, having very basic military stuff is probably okay, but not on the scale of where a country could say invade another country.
I have another thought, maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I think it really ties together. Let's say there is a world police where every nation has one vote, things like that. Well, what about Native Americans?
Mm-hmm.
How do they get represented? Is it each tribe? Are they just lumped in as, you know, North American? Well, I mean, like they span across three countries
Yeah,
at least.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Well,
so
and they're not alone. Like everywhere across the world, there's places like that. I mean,
exactly,
we're different.
Sunni, Shiite,
Yeah,
like whatever. Like even getting into like, do we let people like Hamas or like these so-called terrorist organizations have votes also? Like,
they're
do they
people.
count as a nation of their own?
Well, maybe in that case, it's like maybe the only way to tackle that is if everybody had one vote.
Every
That would
individual human.
every human being got
I
to
mean,
cast.
yeah,
We have the technology to do that right now,
yeah.
and that way
And
it completely transcends borders and nationalities and
do we make it
identities.
compulsory?
Uh, I don't think it would have to be, but I think it would be in a lot of people's best interest to do so.
Yeah.
And it really should come down to only big decisions, not like micromanaging stuff. Like a system like that should never be a micromanager. It's just like, oh, petty little laws and da da da. No, big decisions. Like, what do we do about space?
Right.
How do we stop people from fighting each other? And then as a matter of like a court, say like, okay, well, this conflict in Israel and Gaza and like conflict with Ukraine and Russia, like when it's all said and done, how do we judge the actors involved in this play?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think it makes sense for everybody to participate. And that actually kind of nicely comes back to the wisdom of the crowds. Like,
Yeah.
if everybody cast a vote or a bunch of people cast a vote, then you're probably going to get a fairly fair shake, as long as information sharing is
Well,
accurate and truthful.
yeah. I was just about to say the only problem there
Mm-hmm.
is that the media can still be a negative influence.
Yes, it is. The media spins things always. Basically, if you watch the news or read an article, there is spin.
Yeah.
Always. There's never an like neutral, objective reporting on any situation.
And how do remote tribes, have a voice in that? Like they don't
And
really.
that's a good thing. Well, and maybe we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, this kind of change would be massive, but I would see in the future that they would have the same. I mean, technology.
Yeah.
It's getting so cheap now. The one laptop per child thing, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Which
You can't flip a switch and step into perfection, of course. Like you got to take a middle step. So like one vote per nation is probably the next logical step.
I agree.
But
yeah.
But there, it shouldn't be complacent to that and be like, oh, we've just solved the world's problems. No, like there's still representation that needs to be factored in.
Well, and maybe a system would have to have a structure in place that says like, okay, for the time being, we're doing one vote per nation, but here's the process to get to the point where it's everybody who
Yeah.
can cast a vote. Everybody has access to information, and everybody can cast a vote and be counted. Like,
Yeah. And if everybody's like, oh, this is a thing, and starts thinking about how could this improve my life, my family's life, like
mm-hmm.
my country's life, whatever, how could it make it so there's no countries anymore at all,
Yeah.
then I think more and more people will start contributing to the think tank to solve those, overcome those hurdles
Mm-hmm.
with technology or, access to information. Even a system like that would even pull the economy into a more stable position, I feel like, because
Unified
yeah,
economy.
other countries could be like, hey, this economic warfare has pushed us out of the game for the entire history of humanity.
Yeah.
We would like to be a source of uh, economic stimulus too. We can have factories in our little tiny country too.
Yeah.
Bring
Well,
us
and
jobs.
maybe in that case as well, you could have any individual can propose an idea to be analyzed, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if only one person out of billions does that, then it doesn't really get high on the list. But if billions of people do that, kind of all propose a very similar idea, then
yeah,
it gets voted on by everybody, and that kind of decision could be made. Now, I don't like the idea of a system like this being dictatorial, where it essentially could control, like decide what you can and can't do on an individual level, but more like what we kind of generally agree on as a planet, like big issues, war, space, cooperation, and things like that.
yeah,
I mean, that's a this is way beyond the scope of this episode, but I think it's a good starting point that to kind of like propose this idea and say like, hey,
yeah,
how could, and this goes back to the crowdsourcing kind of thing. Like, you get enough minds together, and we could craft a system that might work, like that might
yeah.
actually be, a functional system.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean,
I do
that's how.
believe that the involvement of AI will be absolutely necessary. Open
Yeah,
source AI.
I was thinking, that the two things that make this possible are the internet and AI,
Mm-hmm.
because until 20, 30 years ago, something like this would have been absolutely impossible.
It would be science fiction.
Yeah,
I mean, and now you have Starlink, and so essentially the entire planet has easy access to the internet. And I mean, yeah, some remote tribe in somewhere without much access to anything might have. It's not like each person would have a Starlink antenna. It might be
yeah,
like the tribe has one, and everybody shares, and that might be but it's achievable now. Like,
yeah,
it's within our grasp, our capacity to do. For instance, also, if every country stopped focusing on warfare, then those resources that were just burning, destroying each other, could be put to, like, say, one laptop per child kind of thing. Like, hey, we're going to build these cheap systems and ship them all over the world, everywhere. Like a solar powered charging station and Starlink setup, right? That
yeah,
has a couple of laptops, and you know, I actually have one of those OLPCs, and it's really really cool. They designed it really well to kind of be perfectly built for those kinds of situations.
huh,
Uh, and that was just a company that did that. Imagine if like everybody participated in that.
yeah, huh,
We could connect everybody together. And I think connecting everybody through communication and information sharing and stuff like that is would totally transform the world. And of course, it would allow for what we're talking about here, having everybody basically have a voice out there.
yeah, huh.
And
Wow.
now we essentially have universal translators. There's like
Oh
AI
yeah,
can do it, and there's software that can do it really easily. So it's like if you spoke It can be translated to any language. If you write, it can be translated to any language. And that way, everybody, like somebody who speaks a language I've never heard before, I can hear what they're saying now.
Yeah.
And
I have
get their
this app called DeepL,
mm-hmm.
and I can take a picture of German text and it instantly lays over English text.
Yep.
On that picture.
Oh yeah, yeah, live. In fact, you can
yeah,
video, like move it around and it will translate live. And there's voice ones that do that too. You can do that through voice as well. So, I mean, we're getting to that point. And honestly, it's like if the planet is ever going to be wholly cooperative, that is what we need.
And by the way, it's also really good at context and you know, like colloquialisms and everything. You know, like that's impressive.
And that is probably using AI to do that, like a Chat GPT style kind of
probably
AI, like a language model sort of thing.
Yeah,
which it's getting better. Like we're in the infancy stage of this technology right now. So if people think it's so amazing and incredible what you can do, it's like, no, this is the ground level. Like consider in terms of computers, this is like ENIAC and things like huge mainframes and stuff like that back in like the 60s. That's where we're at right now. AI has a lot further to go.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I think like that combined with this, what we're talking about, if we add AI into the mix to kind of regulate that, to kind of keep it so, okay, we have a principle that we're going for, a guiding principle, and it keeps everybody in check to kind of prevent people prevent it from getting corrupted, essentially.
Right.
And that I think is the only way to do it, because as soon as you introduce the human element, things get wackadoodle.
We just need to ask AI what AI needs in order to become better.
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I feel like that definitely is going to be like a turning point in the evolution, if you will, of technology, like where technology and human sociology blend.
Yeah.
Is going to be monumental in both regards, you know.
Exactly. Well,
organic life and technical life, if you will.
yeah, and we need that interconnectivity and human cooperation across the planet if we're going to say solve big problems like environmental things or nature, big building projects or whatever that affect everybody, and space exploration, right? Like we're never going to get basically off the ground, so to speak, if the whole planet isn't participating in this, like big time.
Yeah,
sure, if that happened, we might be on our way to warp drive and going to other star systems and stuff like that. And
yeah, if you think about it on a microscopic level, matter and energy found a way to play nice together.
Yeah.
And here we are billions of years later, you know?
Yeah.
So like it's right now, our tiny brains probably think, oh, it's impossible to merge technology and organic life. But no, it's actually like super possible.
Oh yeah. And that could involve,
it totally counts as evolution. You know?
That could involve life extension as well, that maybe we use the technology to basically live forever. You know, that who knows? Anything's possible. Like there's so many possibilities that are like we're on the cusp of.
Yeah. And think of the implications as far as like religion goes, where, you know, if our consciousness could actually exist forever in an interactive sense with this plane of existence, let's say, that really changes the landscape of almost every religion out there.
Oh yeah.
Which, you know, like depending on how you see religion could be a good thing. Because in my opinion, it would really open up minds if we kind of set that aside and started, spending more time in the observable world, let's say.
Yeah, I agree. Man, this
it's a good one.
World War III onto AI, global voting and whatever cooperation and stuff.
Yeah,
it is all connected though, because it's like the last thing we would want is something akin to World War III. Because
right.
that famous saying, I know not what weapons World War III will be fought with, but I know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Yeah.
That will set us back. And every war is a setback. All the lives lost, all the stuff that we built, destroyed, got to build again. And like, why?
For unless, what? Like I said, it's a war on war. And yeah. I realized World War I was originally called the War to End All Wars, but that is a not to be pedantic, that is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So that like we just need to change our scope of thinking to wage war on the primitive aspects of humanity.
Yeah.
Rather than like a hot war with blood and guts and innocent people dying.
Well, I could tell you one thing: if we dissolve borders, like mentally, wars would never happen. Because like, but we're all humans, everywhere.
Yeah, that really is a human concept. You don't see it in the animal kingdom. You see skirmishes and conflict.
Basically, the area that you've peed on. That's the area that's yours, basically. But not like, tribes of antelope getting together and like going across the fields and taking out a bunch of lions or something like that. You don't see that happening.
That's mine. This is mine.
Exactly. And so, I mean, you're never going to eliminate things like conflicts, but when you don't have nationalities, like borders, like that, huge collections of people, the conflicts will be relatively small and mostly insignificant. Like it'll be, like 10 people over here fought like 5 people over there or something, and like, okay, it's over, that kind of thing. You're not going to see whole entire cities destroyed by all kinds of bombs and missiles and stuff like that.
Right. And if punitive actions were, really simple, like don't kill people or we'll have to intervene.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
If it were that simple, instead of like, well, if you don't pay tax or if you expectorate on the sidewalk, like whatever it might be, that
we might not really need a lot of tax if it weren't for warfare and borders and stuff like that. It's like a very small amount of resources could go a long, long way.
Oh yeah.
And it would change whole economies too. Like,
right.
People might not be struggling if it weren't for war. I mean, look at North Korea. That whole entire country is built around they're at war still, like, and that's what most of the resources go towards. Well, other than the people at the top having like lavish lifestyles.
But again, like a concept of the world police, I think would actually kind of introduce an equilibrium to global economy. Global everything, really.
Yeah. Maybe this is something that we can like come back to. I definitely want to hear people's comments, like what are your ideas on this concept? Like whether it be like, do you think World War III is just about to happen, or what we're talking about now about solutions to stopping that from happening?
Right.
I'd like to hear people's comments there. And
well,
I think that's a pretty good place to end it.
Deep,
Deep, man.
Deep. deep sink diving into
Yep.
World War III and like war against war,
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of concepts where like we can kind of flip the narrative of something negative into a positive thing.
Yeah. I
Uh,
man,
I'm like kind of low key excited about like spreading the word about this whole idea.
we should write a book about this,
Yeah.
like as a proposition and kind of outline it. But it's going to require
Mhm.
some more thought, I think. So,
More episodes. Yep.
yep, more episodes. Well, uh, thanks for sticking it out with us, everybody, and hope you enjoy the song on the way out. Might be a good one. You know, we don't know.
They're all good ones.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, so wherever you are in the world, be at peace, get along, help each other. That's
peace and long life. Nanu nanu. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen.
Diffuse, coil in the shoulder, diffuse now, burning water, cause the persona pulls the trigger.